Welcome to Mendezville Live. With something to talk about, here is Rudy Mendez. What's going on, Mendezville Live? We got another show for you tonight. Excited. Gonna learn from my guest. Got some pretty good experiences, some storytelling from different situations. But today's show, but before we get started, we're going to bring this show. Today's show is brought to you by, let's see here. Today's show is brought to you by my brother, Adolfo Mendez. He is running for Awasa District 2. Please go out and vote. It says May 2020. It's an old one I have because that's when the race was going to happen. I know they had a shindig today at Bocanas, I think it was. I hope everybody went out there. Thank you for the support. For those of you that did go out there, highly encourage everybody to vote for Adolfo Mendez. Great guy, great character, great morals. Love that guy to death. And of course, also by World Finance. When life throws unexpected expenses your way, World Finance is here to help. Whether it's medical bills, car repairs, or child care expenses, a personal installment or title loan can help you take control and get back to the good things in life. Even if you have a low credit score or no credit score, they will help you get the money you need. Get started by applying today at their Mission location at 1600 North Conway, Suite A, Mission, Texas. They can take applications by phone at 956-580-4533, or you can visit their website at loansbyworld.com. They are accepting applications with matriculas, passport, or ITIN. You do not need to have a social to apply. All loans are subject to their usual credit underwriting policies. That is World Finance. Great guys over there. They will hook you up. One more time, Adolfo Mendez. Please vote for Adolfo Mendez. That is my brother. Hopefully he wins. He wants to make a difference, wants to listen to the people, wants to take their concerns into consideration and decision making. So I highly encourage everybody to vote. Either way, today we're going to be talking about, we're going to learn. Today we're going to learn. This show is all about learning from different experiences, challenges, all that stuff. My guest tonight, he's a former head coach at Hidalgo High School. Great guy. I've run into him at different tournaments throughout my years since I moved back to the Valley. I've had great conversations. Please welcome Tino Guerrero. What's going on, Tino? How you doing, my man?
Hey, Rudy. Doing good, Rudy. Good to see you.
Man, I'm excited to have you on the show.
Okay.
Because one of the and thank you for making time. And I know it's late. We'll try to teach and help the people and the public and the young coaches and the parents. In an hour and a half, whatever we have here.
Okay.
I remember one of the times, one of the tournaments we were at, me and you, we started talking basketball and coaching, and it always stayed with me. It always stayed with me when you asked me one time, so when does the pass start? I was like, second year coaching junior high, and I said, well, when a player throws it, and you said, no. It starts when the receiver, his teammate, gives him the target. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, you know what? And then it left an impression with me. Thank you so much for that, because you're right. Hey, you got to give your teammate a target. Okay, so Tino, how did you, we're going to talk basketball. I know your son, where's your son going to school? He was pretty successful in running, no?
Yes, he's already graduated. He was at the University of Texas in Arlington.
Awesome. We'll touch base on that. I know I think you had him with Basilio Mendoza. You trained him a little bit?
He helped him out, yes.
Yeah, I had Basilio on the show. I don't know if you caught that one, but he was my coach, JV basketball at La Jolla. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that later in the segment. The main reason today is I wanted to pick your brain on your basketball mind for the people out there in the Valley and the parents and the coaches and all these things. So share with us, how did you start your journey, your basketball coaching journey?
Well, I played high school basketball, junior high and high school basketball in Laredo.
Oh, you're from Laredo. Nice.
Originally from Laredo, and I ended up staying in Laredo when I first graduated and went to coach there. Well, I taught 1 year, and then I started coaching. And so that's where it started, and then from there I moved on to Copper's Cove. I was there for 1 year. Then I was at La Jolla for 5 years. And then I was at Valley View for a year. Then I spent 2 years at Hidalgo. And then my last year coaching in 98, 99 was at Rural High School.
Wait. Time out. Hold on. So this is interesting. So for my personal, so you were a La Jolla Coyotes coach.
I was there for 5 years,
What years were those?
90, 91 through about 94.
So okay, so and I also want to touch base on Rowe. You were at Rowe. What years?
98, 99.
The school year, 98, 99 school year.
Correct.
That 1 year, and that's it.
I was there only 1 year.
That team was stacked.
We got second in district. La Jolla beat us.
Yeah, I know. I was on that team. I was
But
on that team.
But we went 3 deep.
You did, but we played a very tough team in the very first round. So
Oh, we
But-
got those guys twice.
yeah, and I believe it. I believe it, and we'll get and see. That's very interesting because that's a very the coaching aspect on the approach and stuff, and we'll get into that conversation.
Mhm.
But my now that you mentioned La Jolla, I mean, you were at Hidalgo. How was it coaching La Jolla when you were there? Because I didn't get to high school until, what was it, 95, 96, and I was a freshman. I didn't play varsity until my last year.
Yeah, I was already gone. So
How did that go?
I mean, I enjoyed coaching there. I had a lot of fun. I was a freshman football coach, and I did. When I first got there, I was a freshman basketball coach, and I moved up to JV, and eventually was a varsity assistant.
Nice. Oh, but were you the head coach at any point in time or no?
Not in La Jolla, no.
Who was the coach there? Was it Eddie Garza at the time?
Eddie Garza when I left, and when I got there, it was a guy named Jeremy Lyons. The first year I was.
I see that. I see that. And you know, we talk, the guys talk in the 96, 97. We talk about how the glory days of La Jolla.
Mhm.
And I'm a kid at the time. I have no idea what you went through, but and me sharing back the stories is those days we had a lot of success, but we had a bunch of very athletic kids at the time, 17, 18-year-olds. What was it like when you were there before 95, 98, before you left?
Well, I mean, the second year we were there, we won district.
Oh, nice.
We won district, and that's when we had those guys, Ricky Gomez,
Oh, yeah, the Gomez
them.
brothers.
Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty good team.
So okay, see, right now, me and Coach Montalvo, we're working on an alumni tournament. Us 30-year-olds want to get in there, and by year, we want to stick by year. So we all say no one can beat the 99 team. And then they're like, and then Gus Garcia. I don't know if you got to meet Gus Garcia.
I was his coach.
Oh, you were his coach.
I was Gus's coach.
So sácame de dudas. How good was that team?
The one that he played on?
Sure, because we go back.
Or the 91 team.
Or both. Okay, who's the team? Which is the team that went to that played at UT Pan Am?
That was the 91 or 92 team, whatever.
I went to that game. I went to go see it.
Yeah, I was a JV coach that year.
Oh, nice.
So I was on the sideline.
Awesome. What a great atmosphere, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Gus was a good player.
He was. He had a good shot, no algo así?
He made the JV when he was a freshman.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Him and Mando Montalvo, Eric's brother.
Oh, yeah. Mando. I'll tell you what, when I played against Mando a few times, he was already older. Man, I was like, man, this guy has he was very, I don't know, suave, or he had nice little moves, real smooth. I was like, man, it doesn't even look like he's going that fast, but he gets you.
I was their coach. Nice.
Well, congratulations. You coached some pretty good talent up there, man.
Thank you.
So, and then you had good talent, and me and the text thread, you can only imagine a bunch of guys just going at it and talking trash, and we can beat you, and you don't know what you're talking about. So, we got some insight from you. I'm sure Gus will watch the show, and Mando, and who is that? Who played? What Gomez brother played on that team? Was there a Gomez brother on that team?
On the early 90 team was Ricky Gomez.
Yeah, he was solid. I remember him. And what about Ringo? Was Ringo on that team?
Ringo was on that team also, yeah.
And then Ben.
Oh, I was Benny's coach also. He came later.
Yeah, see, I know when Benny was in high school, I was in high school.
Okay. He was a year ahead of you?
I think he was 2 years ahead of me.
Okay. Yeah, when I left, he was a freshman.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So was he a freshman and he was at the JV with you?
He was in the JV with me.
Nice. So what? And we'll get back to it. Let me just write that down so we don't get back to that on that. And then So I'm assuming you left to Hidalgo to be a head coach. Is that what the deal was?
Okay, well, from La Jolla, I went to Valley View. And I was there only 1 year. I was the assistant basketball coach and the JV coach. And that year we won district with the varsity and the JV at Valley View.
Nice.
And so
Very
then
nice.
I got hired at Hidalgo the following year.
I'll tell you what, though. I was sharing with you a while ago that I refed at Hidalgo High School a few times. What a great atmosphere to ref, man. Those games are hot. I think I was one of their main rivals. What school is it? I don't remember the school, but I was like, man, this is a nice game. And, as a referee, you always appreciate refing those hot games that we call. And, I
Correct.
mean, it just gets intense, and I enjoy it. And it's a nice place to officiate there at Hidalgo High School. So, props to that coach and what he's done with that program.
Hmm.
So you're at Hidalgo, you go to Row.
Hmm.
From the coaching world and the coaching aspect and the career and stuff like that, what is it that you're there for 1 year and then you just leave?
From Row, you mean?
Yeah.
I changed careers.
Oh, okay. So you
That's
made I see that. I
yeah.
see.
Hmm.
I remember that team was stacked. I mean, they had the Andy Signs and then that other good kid. What was it? Traeger, was it? What was his name?
Rick Traeger.
Yeah.
Uh,
They were good. And then Kevin
Daniel,
Avendaño was. I'll
Evan
tell you
was
what, though. Kevin was solid. He just was. How many years did he play for you? Just one?
one.
That senior year? I remember
Hmm.
that.
They were
How,
all seniors on that ball club except Andy. Andy was the only junior.
mm.
All the other it was a guy named Brenneman was our shooting guard, and then the other guard was Flores, Ronnie.
Yeah, I remember Ronnie.
Hmm.
I remember I guarded Ronnie for a little bit during our last game, the district title game.
Okay.
That was a pretty good game. I actually refereed. I ended up refereeing with Ronnie now as
Okay.
adults. So
I haven't
I
seen him in a while.
we go back and tell our stories. We're like, yeah, man, remember that game? So so you have a nice, good coaching pedigree, and then of course you got the parenting, which we'll talk about, and I really want to get into that. Talk to me about some of the challenges you saw being a JV coach and developing the program there at La Jolla High School.
Well, I mean, I think I was fortunate enough that I coached seventh grade, junior high athletics. I coached freshman when I started at La Jolla, then JV, varsity. So I coached all levels, So uh, it, depending on who the head coach was, it's whatever they wanted me to do, I do. I try to teach them as much as I can. I hate to use this as an example, but one of the hard things to do is to teach kids basketball that haven't played very long because these leagues that you were used to playing had just started coming around the time that you were playing high school ball. Before
Mm.
that, there were no leagues, just wherever open gym and they came into play. So unless you are at other schools, well, some of those parents would send their kids to camps out of town and stuff, maybe playing leagues out of the valley. But the challenge was trying to get our kids to up to speed with what other kids were already knew on the basketball court.
And you know what? It's interesting you mentioned that because when I moved down here from San Antonio and, I was at
Hmm.
different universities, and that's where I met you was at the different tournaments where I was, you know, motivating and trying to organize my athletes from
Hmm.
JD Salinas at the time is we got to play in these tournaments. And you're
Correct.
right. I didn't know that the tournaments and leagues weren't that big. I just knew as a kid growing up, hey, you're going to play in the Mission League. You're going to play in the Edinburgh Summer League. Can
Hmm.
you show up? And I was like, yeah, coach, I can show up. I have a car. I'll drive some of the guys that live and will drive. So
Hmm.
that's all I knew.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, those leagues started when I was at Hidalgo. They had just started those leagues, and
Mm.
so I would send my kids to go play. Normally, those 5-year schools would let us come in and play on their JV leagues.
Oh,
They
I see.
let me play on the varsity. They didn't want to get embarrassed
Yeah, I got
in
you. I
case we
got
in
you.
case we happen to beat them.
Right, right, right. Which and it can happen, especially nowadays. I remember one of my very first varsity games that I officiated here in the Valley was at San Isidro.
Okay.
And man, I left so impressed. I was like, man, these guys can actually ball up. They can
Mhm.
hoop. Even though they're what is it, 3A, 4A school?
They're a 1A school.
Wow, yeah. And I just and the gym was nice, and I said, man, this is basketball.
I'm old enough to remember when they used to have football back in the late 80s, somewhere around there, 86. I think it's when they stopped, or 87, they stopped their football program. And so they've been nothing but basketball since. And I
Hmm.
think the head coach, I forget his name. I know the gentleman. I think
Yes.
he's still there. I think he's still around.
Yeah. ¿cómo se llama? I forgot his name too. I refereed I referee almost once a year there.
Yeah,
Almost once a year.
real nice guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Real nice.
And he was a head coach back in 1990 when I was at La Jolla. He was
Really?
that's San Isidro.
Nice. Well, so when you were at La Jolla, was Basilio there with you or no?
Well, I saw part of the interview that you did with Basilio a few weeks ago, or a few months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and he told the story right. He had wanted to coach. When I got to La Jolla, when I got to La Jolla, I had already been in education for 3 years. So two in Laredo, one in Copper Skull. So when I got to La Jolla, it was my 4th year, and that was Basilio's first year as a teacher. And he had wanted to coach, but there was never an opportunity for him. Eddie Garza had gotten somebody to coach the JV, but then the guy didn't even start, just kind of said, I don't want to do it after all.
Yeah.
So he offered it to Basilio.
Ándale.
So Basilio started coaching there in La Jolla.
So that's how you met Basilio then, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yeah,
Nice.
And what happened was I was supposed to be the JV coach. Tommy Garcia was supposed to be the sophomore team coach.
Oh, I see.
The varsity assistant coach went to do nothing but football. Martin Salazar, may he rest in peace.
Okay.
Martin no longer was doing football, and then I got bumped up to be the varsity assistant. Tommy gets bumped up to do the JV, and Basilio came in to be the sophomore team coach after the other teacher said he didn't want to coach after all.
I see that. I see. I'll tell you what, Tommy, now that I work with him when I was at a feeder school to Juarez Lincoln, man, Tommy's such a great guy, great mind. I still remember, correct me, I mean, I don't know if you want to speak out of place or what it might be. I don't know what to call it is. I was a student at La Jolla, and something about him, he just left the game, the girls' game. He's like, he got upset, so the girls left, something like that. Is that correct? Did you hear about that story or no?
Yeah, see, when he became the girls' head coach,
yeah,
I left to Valley View.
Okay.
He was the assistant coach one more year, and when I went to Hidalgo, that's when. So I went from La Jolla to Valley View. Then from Valley View, I was there 1 year, and then I went to Hidalgo. When I went from Valley View to Hidalgo, Tommy went from the boys' assistant coach to the girls' varsity coach.
Yeah, and I gotta get Tommy in here. And I think my main goal, and I was just going back and forth in a message thread with some of the guys, is one of my goals in coaching junior high right now, and I'm fortunate that I'm very good friends with Eric Montalvo, and you know how I guess there's a respect or a fear or you don't want to talk out of place with the head coach.
Correct.
Well, me and Montalvo don't have that. It's like I'm gonna tell you the way I see it, and he respects. There's not like we don't talk bad to each other, but it's like, hey, I think you messed up here, or I think you should do this. And it's a very nice situation that I'm in because I get to talk to the head coach. Hey, we got to get this done. We got to we're communicating and I tell him, what do you want from me? Give me your, and see some of the drills, it's verbiage. I need your verbiage because I want my guys to be ready for whatever you got ready. You know what I'm saying? So I guess I'm fortunate in that sense in the high school and the junior high coaching when it comes to it. Is that something you guys did over there in Valley View and Hidalgo?
Well, I mean, as far as communicating, yes. When I was the head coach at Hidalgo, I had more say so. I had 2 7th grade coaches, 2 8th grade coaches. We had 2 freshman teams. We had a sophomore team. We had a JV team. And I even had a varsity assistant that the school already provided for the head basketball coach. I actually had to find a sophomore team coach because I just had too many kids that showed up. And I was real strict. I mean, I was the type of guy that when I became the head coach, I had a contract with the kids that they had to sign, that my principal signed, that the athletic director signed, and that the parents of the kids signed.
I like that. What can you talk to me about it? Explain, elaborate a little bit more about that.
Well, there were rules, regulations, and the consequences, and there were a few items that if they got caught doing was automatic expulsion from the team. Now, as a head coach, because I had that authority, right? As an assistant coach was different.
Right.
And I was an assistant coach for a lot longer than I was a head coach. So, I was better at, I knew my place, whenever I was not the head coach. But when I was a head coach, what I was able to do was say, hey, here are the rules. And if you do one of these three things, you're gone. One of them was if you got caught doing drugs, you're gone. If you got smoking, you're gone. If you got caught skipping school, you're gone. Oh, and the fourth one was if you got caught fighting, you're gone. No second chances.
Automatic.
Automatic. So the students would ask me, and I was already doing high school, was what if they hit me first? I said, well, it's easy to hit back, because if you hit back, nobody's going to call you names. But if you don't hit back, then they're going to call you all kinds of names. And to me, that's the real man, the one that walks away from the fight. So those were rules that automatically called for expulsion. I never had any problems with it. There were other things like, not showing up to practice. There was a first chance, second chance. In the chances, I never suspended kids from games. I never did that. What I did is I suspended kids from practice. Because if they didn't practice, they didn't play or dress out.
I see.
That's what my rules did. So I would say, okay, if you get caught doing this, you're going to get suspended from two practices. That means they couldn't play the next game or two, depending on when those two practices fell in.
Right. That makes sense. And it's interesting you mentioned that because there's some books I've read and I like to read. And when I'm a fan of the Audible, I'm driving and I'm listening. But before that, there was about 2 books, and it's very clear that I read. And the coaches of philosophy is you never punish the team if the player is available. Granted, like for the whole game, like,
correct.
A certain player is available and it's a big game. Well, by you not playing him the whole game, well, now you're punishing the team and different. And of course, every coach, every person has their rules,
correct,
different philosophies. But when I read that, I was like, man, I like that. If the kid's available, he's not suspended or he hasn't done drugs and he's available. Like, for example, I asked, Romeo de la Garza. I was refereeing at Mission Vets when he was still there. And he told me he was coaching at Edinburgh North when Peter was there. Pete, remember Pete?
Yeah. I played against him when I was at Hidalgo.
Okay, yeah. So phenomenal player, right?
Yeah, it was. We couldn't stop him.
Yeah, and I just know from a kid watching from the stands, a fan is, and I asked him, hey, coach, how come you didn't play in the first half? He goes, it's funny you mentioned that. He got in trouble at school. I don't know what he was doing with, I don't know the backstory, something about a vending machine or something, but he got in trouble at school. So our decision or their decision was, we're going to have to suspend him for one half. And it was against La Jolla Coyotes, big game. And sure enough, he comes in the second half and, oh, man, he just goes to work and does his thing. But
we played Edinburgh North twice when I was at Hidalgo. Back, I think Adan Rendon was the head coach. So Romeo followed him. I think it was Adan Rendon that was he was a head coach because we played him twice. The first time we gave him a good game at our place. Second time that's when that Peter guy was playing. No. Yeah. I couldn't stop him.
It's one of those basketballs. One of those things that if you have one really outstanding player, it's kind of hard to match.
All the year. One of the things is that I didn't allow the kids to get technicals. Okay. And so I said, look, I'm the one that's going to get technicals, not you. I said, so if you get a technical, you're sitting down. I'm not going to play it. So
automatic. You're out for the game.
Automatic. 11 years that I coached. Out of the 12 years that I taught, I coached 11 years. Out of the 11 years that I coached, 0 technical fouls. In 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever I was coaching, varsity, I had 1 at La Jolla. And it was a kid that got a foul, parents' night. I'm not going to mention the kid because you know him. I'm coaching this kid, JV. His parents are in the stand. He's a good kid, but he gets a technical. And I asked the ref, I said, what do you do? He goes, he said, F you. I said, no, this guy doesn't even talk much. Let's say bad words. I said, no, that didn't happen. And so, no, he did. So he gave him a technical. So my rule was, you're out.
Right.
So afterwards, I asked the kid, I said, well, what did you, I'm sorry I had to sit you down, but why did you say that? He goes, I didn't say that, coach. He goes, when he called foul, on me. I said, who fall on who? And he thought he said,
Uh-huh. I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes.
Makes sense. Makes
And so
sense.
you give him a technical. My rules, that was the only technical in 11 years of coaching.
It's interesting you mentioned that about the rules. I mean, I know this, it's not basketball wise, but I remember I stole a rule when I was doing intramurals at Loyola Marymount. I'm at
Mhm.
a regional flag football tournament. This guy from, I think he was from Utah or Wyoming. He was from Wyoming. He has his team there. And, we start talking and, sharing stories. How do you run your program, policies, procedures? We all, it's like a little round table, but it's just me and him. And he goes, "Oh, my guys," he goes, "I make them sign a contract. And if anyone gets an unsportsmanlike penalty in this tournament, the whole team is automatically suspended from intramurals for one whole year." I
Correct.
go, "Really?" So then I implemented that at Loyola Marymount when I went back, and I think it was flag football. Then we went to a basketball tournament. And it's amazing how when they sign that contract, you talk to, they're young men, 18, 19, 20,
Mhm.
21 year olds, and you explain
Correct.
the rule. Hey, look, we're representing the university. You're there to play. Don't worry about the refs. And
Hmm.
sure enough, you could tell where they start getting a little heated and upset. But because of the contract, their own teammates, hey, calm down. We're here to
That,
play.
tell them
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
it holds them accountable together. So
Mhm.
I'm a fan of certain rules like that. Um, I know in the NBA, you see almost all players give this face like I didn't do it. And being a referee at Tasso, I'm not going to ref this year. There's not that many games. I'm going to take the
Mhm.
year off, but sometimes you just, you call the game as best you can, and that's
Correct.
and that's just the way it is.
Hmm. Yeah.
How? Go ahead.
I mean, talking about consequences for the kids. So if somebody misbehaved in class or was late to class, or a teacher told me that they're not finishing their work at either homework or in the classroom, after practice was over, and it didn't matter what sport it was, I ran everybody. And a
Everybody.
lot and a lot of the times, what the kids would say is, well, "Why do I have to run if he's the one that was late, or he's the one having trouble in school?" And what I would tell them is, "Look, if he misses a free throw with no time left for us to win, he's not the only one that loses."
Right.
I go, "So you make sure he gets to school on time. You make sure that he does his work on time. Make sure that he doesn't badmouth the teacher or whoever's complaining about him." I go, "Because the problem is not you, the problem is him." And the peer pressure actually does work. Like you said earlier, in the intramurals, they start telling each other, "Hey, settle down, settle down. We don't want to get kicked out of the league." Same thing here. They don't want to run extra, but I
Right.
would run them. I
Yeah.
always did that.
Now, when you do that, I'm a fan of that,
Hmm.
but I know there are certain things I can't do old school. Did you ever get any backlash from parents when you did that?
No, let me tell you why. So I only had one parent talk to me after a game one time. Okay, once. And that was when I was in Copper Scope. And the lady, I mean, I don't blame her for questioning me. He was my best basketball player. Could not remember the plays. He was the
Mm.
best one by far, number one player on the whole eighth grade class.
Right.
But the guy could not remember the plays. So I had him on the 18. He'd come off the bench and play a little bit. We would have to reduce our plays because he couldn't remember them. And so the mom finally says, "Coach, can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "It can be when everybody's gone." I said, "Okay." Very nice conversation. She knew that I didn't want to talk to them about playing time or anything like that. But she wanted to know if there was something he was doing wrong. I said, "Nothing." Behaves, is a heck of an athlete, shows up to practice, does all his schoolwork. He's an A student. I go, "The only problem is he cannot remember the plays." I go, "So when I put him in there, we're limited on what we can run because he can't remember it." I said, "So I'm going to give you an opportunity for you to make a decision." I said, "Because really, if you want him to play more, I'll put him on the B team. I go, if you want him to play the way he's playing and get better, he's got to be on the A team. But he's not going to get a lot of playing time until he learns the plays." And so she chose to move him to the B team, and he played there, I don't know, about a week or so. And then he came in and says, "Coach, can I move back?" I said, "You understand that unless you learn the plays, we're not going to pay you that much." I mean, he was just no competition over there. Only parent that ever came to talk to me. The reason being is because most of the time I would tell the kids, I said, "Look, until you prove to me that you're better than the guy in front of you, whether he's the point guard, the center, the shooting guard, whatever the position is. Until you prove to me that you're better than them, they're going to play more than you. So when your parents ask you, how come Rudy's playing more than you are? I go, I don't want you to say, I don't know. And I don't want you to go like this. Because you know the truth. And
right.
the truth is, Rudy's better than you. I said, so don't lie to them. So if they come and they tell me, asking me why you're not playing enough, I said, I'm going to blame you. I'm going to run everybody. Tell them the truth.
And I like that. And it's very interesting you mentioned that because the old phrase of, coach has his favorites, plays his favorites. And to me, I don't know where I was reading, and they just came to me a few years back. I'm like, and I've told some of my players, depending on the sport and the relationship I have, I think it's more like 8th grade, 7th grade, they're still learning, is I say, yeah, I do have my favorites. And I tell them, don't let coaches tell you they don't have favorites. Yeah, coaches have favorites. The guys that work hard, the guys that are committed, the guys that know the plays, the guys that listen, like all these attributes come into, well, yeah, it's not technically favoritism and the kid's not good. It's we favor that kid because he fits all the qualities and factors that we need to be a little bit more successful, right?
Correct.
And when we tell them that, and of course, like I said, I have already built that rapport with them, and they understand. And when you mention that, even me growing up, I think most people, and not just me, just most high school kids know. You know what? If they're honest with themselves, okay, that kid's a little bit taller, or that kid's a little bit faster, or he runs plays better, or whatever it might be, right?
Correct.
So you got to be. I think if you're upfront with them and honest with them and the expectations, they'll understand.
This is the other thing I did is that I would tell, when I was a head coach at Hidalgo, I would tell the junior high coaches, all the sub-varsity teams, you dress them out, you play them all. I don't care how much you play them, but you play them all. I said, because you never know who's going to be the late bloomer. And I'll tell you a story about a late bloomer here in a few minutes. But, when I was the varsity coach at Hidalgo, I always carried 14 kids on both teams. I just had too many kids. So I had 14 kids 2 years in a row. Every game, 12 to 14 kids would play. Some of them more than others,
right?
But they would play. The reason I would do that is for this. When the 2 years I was there, we won one non-district game every year. But we went, third place in both, back when third place didn't go to the playoffs, but we got third 2 years in a row, went 9-5 or whatever. Yeah, 9-5, 2 years in a row. But only won one non-district game for two reasons. One, because I played everybody, and two, because we played 5A teams. That was just on purpose. We were a 3A school. So,
the late bloomers.
Yeah, so I would tell the kid, I would tell my kids, I said, the coach would ask me, how come you're putting the third string point guard? I said, he's got to play. The guy needs a break. I go, I'm running the heck out of him in the games. I said, he just told me he needed a break. I already put in the backup, and the third string is going to come in and get some minutes. I said, because if we are in a district game down the road and the point guard gets hurt and the backup fouls out, now I got to go to the third string point guard. And if that guy hasn't had any playing time, that's my fault, because he should have played earlier before the district started. So I never hesitated putting kids in because they had playing time coming into district.
Man, I'll tell you what. I mean, you just you just reopened a scar for me, man. And let me tell you why. I learned that one thing I learned. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever be a varsity coach. I do have aspirations to do that once my kids get older, but it just depends. But one thing I did learn being on that 98, 99 La Jolla basketball team was, I think Coach Eddie Garza could have done. I mean, great coach. I mean, he developed us. I'll always say he developed us. He ran, if I look back at it, he ran a nice structured program during the athletic period after school. I think it was pretty structured from what I can recollect, right? As a kid, you don't think the same as an adult. But the one thing I did learn is when I look at that picture, I mean, we were stacked, the starters, and then our post didn't play that much. Some of the guards didn't play that much, and then we get in trouble, and our bench doesn't know how to play, can't handle the pressure. I mean, I was a backup point guard. I was fortunate that I would get my minutes, right?
Correct.
And then I think we would only play like 6 or 7 guys. And some of the games that we got in trouble that were really tight, I mean, we have another guy that's 6'3", 6'4", like 2 or 3 of those guys. And in my mind, thinking back, I'm like, why didn't they know how to play that much? But and that year we're beating teams by 30, by 25. By the third quarter, the game was over.
Correct.
And even those guys still didn't have the game experience. So that's the one thing I'm with you on. That is, in the preseason, those guys got to get that game experience because it's nerve-wracking.
They do. You know, and so as a head coach, my instructions were 7th through JV. They dress out, they're playing. Okay. And I would go to all the home games if I didn't have a game. And I would tell them, you got to play them. I was coaching in Coppers Cove my third year in education. And our starting quarterback was about 6'3", about 220, big guy, James Ritchie, white kid, real nice guy. I didn't get to know him very well when he was playing football because I was coaching football at the junior high, but then I did baseball at the high school. And he was our catcher. Yeah, he was our catcher, and so and the other quarterback that I had as a baseball player on the JV, he was one of our pitchers. And I remember I asked James, I said, we were coming back from Laredo from a tournament, going back to Coppers Cove, and I was driving one of the vans. And James was sitting next to me, and I said, now, James, I said, how long have you been a quarterback? He says, 2nd year, coach. He goes, this is my 2nd year I played quarterback. Last year I played, with the JV backup, and now this year I'm the starter on the varsity. And the guy that he was backing up on the JV was pretty good too, but they were both juniors. So James says, when I was in 7th grade, and they didn't have a C team, but he was exaggerating that he was like the 3rd string left guard on the B team. He was a little chunky kid that he goes, coaches played me, I never quit. He goes, and all of a sudden I grew up. Well, that guy ended up getting a scholarship to play football as quarterback for Sam Houston.
Wow.
University of Sam Houston. And when he graduated, he actually got invited to try out with the Cowboys as a tight end.
Really nice.
So there was an article by the AP back then that talked about, I remember I was reading it and nobody believed me that I had coached that guy in baseball. And I said, I know that guy. And he goes, how do you know him? I said, well, he was our football player at Coppers Cove when I was there. I go, so the article was about colleges trying to get big quarterbacks like Aikman, because that was something new to have a big quarterback like Troy Aikman and the Cowboys. And so, here they are graduating from college, and there's not enough room for them on NFL teams, and are they willing to play other positions? So James Ritchie gets invited to the Cowboys. It's an AP story. I'm sure you can find it somewhere on the internet. And he was invited to the Cowboy camp as a tight end, to try out as a tight end. Of course, he got cut after the first week, but he was there. He got invited.
Yeah, he was big. How cool is that?
And he was a late bloomer.
And I will say, as a young, my first or second year in coaching junior high is now as experience, you understand the late bloomer. You understand they're going to hit puberty. They're going to, they all level out in 10th, 11th grade, some in 9th. So I've learned that, especially in 7th and 8th grade, it's very important for all of them to get the reps.
Correct.
Like they got it, whether it's A team, B. And I tell them, I'm like, hey guys, A teamers a little bit bigger, B teamers, you'll catch up height wise. But while we're playing, you need your reps. You need to understand the game, whether it's football, basketball, whatever it may be. You got to understand the game and get those reps. And I think as I've gotten more experience, you get to learn that late bloomer, and it's gonna happen.
I used to write down every minute of my practice. I learned that from football coaches.
Every what?
Every minute of my practice.
Oh, yeah.
So if I started practice at 7 p.m., from 7 to 7:02, they're jogging to get warmed up. From 7:02 to 7:06, we're stretching. From like that, 7:06.
Yeah, it's scripted. Yeah, it's scripted practice.
Every minute was accounted for. And I still have those things somewhere here in my house.
Okay.
All my schedules. And I remember uh, one of the things that when coaches, junior high coaches, well, how much fundamentals can I do? How many fundamental drills are there that you can do? And I said, okay, first of all, I used to be a junior high coach, so there's a plenty. Oh, you don't understand because I only have 1/4 of a court to practice on. Well, I went through that too. I can show you how you can still spend 75 to 80% of your practice on a basketball practice doing fundamentals or situations.
Mm.
That's how much time I spent when I was coaching 8th grade. That's how much time I spent when I was a head coach at 11. 75 to 80% of the time, fundamentals and situations. Somebody asked me one time, we're about to play at Couch Elsa, and back when Capello was there, and they press.
Oh, yeah.
So in my practice schedule, I had 6 minutes of practicing breaking a full court press and 6 minutes of practicing breaking a half court press.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my assistant coaches goes, Coach, you're only going to cover it for 6 minutes. We play at Couch tomorrow. I said, yeah, Coach, but we've been practicing 6 minutes of breaking full court presses and 6 minutes of breaking half court presses every day since August. If we don't know now in November how to break a press by now, then we're not going to know until today. We practice it. That's a situation every day.
Right.
Inbound play. So when we practice breaking a press, I would restrict the 6th player, but I would put 6 players on defense against us. And I would tell them a 6th player, but I would restrict where he would be at on the court. He could do whatever he wanted to when he was in that area. Half court trap, it was a certain area. And I would use the only thing those volleyball lines are good for. I would use those volleyball lines to tell them you can't get outside these lines. Lines that are in the
right.
So, but then I would tell the JV, because those are the ones that we usually practice against. I said, look, if we score a layup on you, you owe me 10 push-ups. And then I would tell the varsity, if they steal the ball on you, you owe me 10 push-ups.
I got you.
So they were always doing push-ups because somebody scored or somebody didn't score.
Yeah,
so,
and go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's interesting you mentioned that because when I learned that being running drills, but adding competition to them, whether it's full court press, even the fundamental drills. Because see, I'm a fan of that, and I learned that at Indiana State.
Correct.
Because at Indiana State, I got to be a scout player for the women's team.
Okay.
So I mean, I was just stealing information, learning, and they had the white and the blue team, and they had the team managers keep track of their layups. 2 minutes, boom. Who won? Okay, whoever lost on the line. And Kansas drill, whatever it was, there was always a competition to it, to where it's not, we're just going through the motion. It's you still got to win. Like you still got to make it. And I learned that. I do that right now with the junior hires. In 7th grade, I do it a little bit towards the half once they get good at certain things. And once in 8th grade, it's like, hey, we're competing against each other because you got to make whatever it is we're doing correctly. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of that.
And another situation that we would practice every day was trying to prevent a team from inbounding the ball and catching it in the air or a bounce pass. Or catching it in a straight line or a bounce pass. So, like, let's say that a team is trying to inbound the ball under their own basket. Okay.
In the backcourt.
So now they're restricted by the half court. So I would tell them, okay, we're going to play man to man. We're gonna have a free safety. So we're inviting a lob for the free safety to steal it. Nobody's going to be on the ball this time. I go, and the other 4 guys are going to face guard. If your man gets the ball on a chest pass or a bounce pass, you didn't do your job. I go, now we want a 6-second violation.
I got you.
Not a 5-second violation. So if you can hold them for 6 seconds, then you can do it for 5 seconds.
Yeah, for sure.
And if the JV inbounded the ball successfully, varsity did 10 push-ups, the group. And if the JV didn't inbound the ball safely, then they did 10 push-ups.
Yeah, feel that pressure during practice. Which is it's a good philosophy. You speak of playing everybody. And I mean, we can go in different directions, but I'm going to the direction of playing everybody. I even told Coach Bass this. I said, Basilio, you coach, you were running all these cross-country players, you were, and I told him, I was like, man, you took minutes away from me to get prepared for the varsity. You knew I was going to be on the varsity next year. You were getting backup point guards for me, taking my minutes away. What? Come on, man. It's years later. I'm an adult. I tell him, I was like, man, Bass, and I guess it's one of those things where, I mean, it's just a different philosophy, I guess.
I mean,
At the JV, I understand 7th, 8th, 9th.
yeah, I mean, I still JV. Everybody play. You dress them, they play. That was my rule, and I did the same. And when I was the JV coach or the 8th grade coach, I did the same. I dressed them out, they played.
And it's tough though, because in those days, I mean, you had what? I mean, I remember La Jolla. We had like 30 deep in freshman A team, 20 deep in the freshman B team.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and for the same reason, because I would tell. This is what I told the junior high coaches and sub varsity coaches at the high school. And I said, I haven't heard anything different this year, but there's never been a 7th grade, 8th grade playoffs. There's never been freshman playoffs, sophomore team playoffs, or JV playoffs. I said, the only one that goes to the playoffs is the varsity. So all of y'all's job is to get them ready to come play over here with the varsity.
You're freezing up. Hold on. Repeat that again, Tino, real quick.
I don't care if you go 0-30, 0-20. Your job is not to win district because you're not going to the playoffs. Last time I checked, still this year, there is no junior high playoffs, freshman playoffs, JV playoffs.
Right.
Only the varsity goes to the playoffs.
I 100% agree. Especially me being in the junior high level, it's we gotta develop them. We have to develop them, and like you said, they gotta get their reps. Sometimes some play more than others,
and that's fine because I mean you can't punish the better players. You can't punish the ones. And then here's what the varsity, here's what was different with the varsity was I would tell the kids, I said, look, some of you are going to be role players. That means you're coming off the bench. And coming off the bench playing, it could be 2 minutes a game. It could be 3 minutes. 2 minutes a half, 3 minutes a half, 5 minutes a half. I don't know what you're going to end up doing. Depends on what the starters are doing. I go, they get tired. I got to give them a break. I go, but you still have to put the same effort. You still have to be here on time, and you still have to pass your classes to get your 2, 4, 5 minutes of playing time every half. That's your role. Until you prove it otherwise, that's what you're going to play.
I absolutely. From the coaching standpoint, it's absolutely correct. Did you run a run and gun, full court stuff, or set plays, or what was it? What was your philosophy there?
Well, depends on the team. It's kind of funny because it depends on what you've got. You see, we're not fortunate like college coaches. They get to recruit the players that fit their system.
Right.
So you have to adjust your system to be able to. One of the years that I was at La Jolla, we were running a 1-3-1 because Eddie came in. Eddie liked running a 1-3-1 zone. When he came in, he liked us running that. So I said, I'm going to run a 1-3-1 zone whenever we get tired, and to give him a break. And we were just 3 freshmen on the team. Okay, so I didn't. Besides Gus and Mando, there was another guy that was a freshman on the JV team, and I wanted to give them as much playing time as possible because I knew they were going to be in the varsity for the next 3 years. But at the same time, Eddie wanted us to teach him a 1-3-1 zone. If it was up to me, I would have just taught him man. But he wanted me to learn a zone, so I taught him a 1-3-1 zone. Well, one of those players couldn't remember that when the ball went away from him, he dropped the back block. He couldn't remember. He kept getting beat on a layup back there. I go, what's going on? I'm not going to mention the player. And it wasn't one of the 2 that we talked about.
Right.
Hey, there's 3 there that you're not going to guess which one it was. But I would tell him, I said, how can you not forget? Coach, I forget. So I had to line him up on a 1-1-3.
Okay.
And I ran a 1-1-3. That way he didn't have to forget to drop down from the wing.
Right.
He was already there.
Interesting. Man versus zone. I'll tell you what, and tell me what you think about this. You mentioned a zone, and you'd rather run man.
Correct.
I tell my players, especially I had a 7. I remember my buddy. He goes, we're gonna get you at Chavez Middle School. He goes, your job is you need to develop that basketball program.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, you need to develop that basketball program, right? And I have a 7th grade team at the time. And I won maybe 2 games.
That's okay.
And he goes, and I would tell my players, I said, we're gonna run man. I said, we're not gonna run zone. I said, if we run zone, we probably win more. But I said, that's not my job. If somebody were to tell me, I would tell them, if somebody were to tell me, if you run zone, you're gonna win 100 out of 100 games.
Mm-hmm.
But if you run man, you're probably gonna win what you won. And I said, and I will still run only man at the junior high level. Because when you run man, you learn the game of basketball.
Correct.
Instead of, okay, I just go to this spot and then come back. I go to this spot and then come back. I personally am not a fan of zone at the junior high level. I've told different coaches, stop running zone. Everybody's different. I don't run zone in junior high. I will say this, though. This year, I was 7th grade. I was fortunate that I had a really good, I had a good team. I go into the final game, undefeated, district title on the line. 7th grade. And I said, okay, this game is not about teaching. This game is we got to try to win this game.
Correct.
We're going up against Cathy Middle School. They're all travel ball players for years. I got a team with like one really good travel team player, 2 other guys that have been playing, 2 years. They're still a little bit behind the years. I'm like, all right, let's try a zone. I ran a zone here. I ran a zone there. The game's out of hand. We're going back to man. What is your take on my philosophy there on running man versus zone?
I prefer, unless the head coach told me to teach a zone, and I was a sub-varsity coach or a junior high coach, I didn't teach a zone. Because if you run a zone, once the opposing team chooses the side that they're going to start the play, usually they're going to go to the right or the left.
The overload, yeah.
Your defense becomes a man.
Yeah.
The zone to the ball side is going to play the ball, deny anything close to it, or they're going to sack to the post if you're afraid of the post. And the backside defense is going to become help defense.
True.
Just like a man. I think if you teach man principles and the head coach wants to run a zone, that's fine. I never told my sub-varsity and junior high coaches not to run a zone. I said, you can run a zone as long as it's a 1-2-1-1 full court press zone or a 1-2-1-1 or 1-3-1 half court press zone. That's the only time you can run a zone. Once you come out of that, then you're going to fall back into a man. I don't care if you play a sagging man. You're not going to play zone. I didn't let them play zone.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot better for the kids to play man in junior high. And you know what? It's a lot easier maybe to like 7th graders, 6th grade teams you run zone because it's hard for the players to make those 3-point shots. Whereas high school varsity is like, hey, you give them a space, they'll make it. So
Correct.
I think a lot of coaches fall in the trap of I want to win, so I got to run a zone. And my mind is I got to develop, so I got to run man.
Yeah, I always thought developing was the more important thing for sub-varsity coaches.
Oh, absolutely. I'm 100% with that. Yeah, it's fun to win, but not at the cost of development.
I was I got hired at Copper's Cove, okay? And so I'm in Laredo, and I had been there for 2 years, coach 1 year. And then I ended up leaving Laredo because I run into a board member who was a friend of mine. He used to go to our basketball games when I was in high school. And when I was in college, I was working for a sporting goods store. That we ended up doing some business with him. So he was a business owner, real estate owner, and he was a school board member. Well, the gentleman, I run into him after my first year coaching. And so I'm in the spring, and it's, on a Saturday, they fired the coach that hired me. They just brought in a new guy. And he goes, and I ran into him in a restaurant on Saturday morning. And he goes, hey, Tino, how you doing? I said, good. He goes, have you met with the new coach? I said, I have. But have you met with him one-on-one? I said, I have met with him one-on-one. He goes, well, what did he tell you? No, he told me that I can come back and do the same thing I was doing this year. 7th grade football, 8th grade basketball, and JV baseball. Tino, he doesn't have a choice. You're from Laredo. He can't fire you. And I got home, and I thought, I don't want a job because I'm from Laredo. I want a job because I know what the heck I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I decided to leave. And I never went back. I applied for a job one time. I got offered several jobs to go back. I never went back. I applied for one job. That was when Alexander became a high school. I applied for the head coaching job. I was one of the 6 people that got interviewed for that job. But I remember I left, and I left for that reason. I didn't want to have a job because of who I was or where I was from. So I left my hometown. And then so I get hired at Copper's Cove. The head coach interviews me, and the head coach, a year older than me, he had just become a head coach. And he says, we already have 7 junior high coaches, and we're going to hire an 8th one with the primary sport being basketball. You're actually going to have a basketball class at the junior high. He goes, I'm trying to find somebody to fill that. And so I just, interviewed, and he ended up hiring me. And the 2 years before I got there, 7th, 8th grade football, they had 2 7th grade, 2 8th grade basketball teams that played 10 games. There were 10 district games. Mm-hmm. No non-district games, nothing like that. Nobody tried to go to tournaments. You have football coaches trying to get through to go to track and then football again. Right. So they didn't care about basketball. So I go in there and they say, Tino, we've gone 0-40 years in a row. I said, what do you mean you haven't won a game with 7th or 8th grade? He goes, no. And I'm like, I figure I can at least win one game. I mean, going to So I ended up getting tournaments. I ended up getting non-district games. We won 2 tournaments with several teams, with the 7th grade teams. And we ended up winning 57 games of all the games that we played. Nice. And we ended up losing like 24 combined as a program. 2 7th grade teams, 2 8th grade teams.
Nice. Oh, you mentioned basketball junior high class. That's awesome, man. I wish I had a junior high basketball class.
No, that was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it. The only reason I came back is my ex-wife got homesick, or else I would have stayed over there. I liked it over there. You know who the head coach was before I got there?
Where? At Cove?
In Copper's Cove?
No.
Billy Clyde Gillespie. You remember that name?
I have no idea who he is.
Kentucky. He was a head coach at Kentucky before Tubby.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And they couldn't win a game.
Well, he
was the head coach at the high school, you mean?
At the high school, when I got there, he had been the head coach. He had just left to go to New Braunfels Canyon. It was a brand new high school back then, and he went and opened that school as a head coach.
Oh, so that was his journey. He was in his journey.
Yeah, and then eventually ended up at Killeen Ellison. So when I was at La Jolla, I think, I went to the state tournament, and he took that team to the state tournament at Ellison High School. That was the district that I was in when I was in Cove. And so then after that, he ends up going to college to coach at Illinois with Bill Self.
The Fighting
Illini. One of Bill
Illini.
Self's assistants. And when Bill Self got the job at Kansas, Billy Clyde ended up being the head coach at UTEP. And took that team to the to the NCAA tournament. And then he went to A&M, took them to some places. And then he ended up getting hired by Kentucky, but he didn't stay there. They let him go, and then eventually ended up at Texas Tech. The last time I heard he was head coach there.
It's interesting the way coaches and the journeys, and you get connected with everybody. It's pretty cool. That is very cool. That is very cool. I will say I'm a fan of basketball class in junior high. I think I'm a personal believer in if you develop good athletes into good basketball players, they're phenomenal football players. Mm-hmm. I have a fighting argument with football coaches. I think that's one of the reasons I don't think I could ever coach high school basketball unless the football coaches were to say anyone that's going to decide to play basketball will go to basketball class once football is over.
Correct.
But, it's that's not going to happen. Another one is I've seen where football programs after school, from what I hear, across the valley and different referees and different coaches, is that some football coaches will keep the freshmen, sophomores, or juniors that are not in varsity. They'll make them do weights or whatever it is the first hour, and then they can go and practice basketball after school the second hour. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's right. I think it hurts the football program more than it helps because of the skill sets that require you, their mindset, the challenge, all these things that come with basketball. You're challenging the mind more than you are the body, so they could be ready for Friday nights. But that's just me. Now that I mentioned that, what kind of relationships did you have any obstacles like that when you were a basketball coach with the football coaches?
Well, when people ask me that don't know me, and I tell them that I used to be a coach, and people that, I might meet them out of town somewhere, they're like, what did you coach? That's always the first question. I said, well, I was a basketball coach. Oh, okay. But I am in Texas, so I have to coach football too.
Right.
So I actually, when I got hired, so I got you want a story? So here's a story.
Yeah. The more stories, the better.
I decided to coach, and I see in the paper that they're hiring junior high coaches at the school junior high that I went to in Laredo. I was teaching at the elementary next door. And so then I decided to apply. And so I go in there for an interview. The gentleman that interviewed me, may he rest in peace, Ed Pivito was his name. So he started asking me about, talking about the veer offense. That's what they ran. And I'm like, Coach, timeout. He goes, what is it? I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, huh? I said, I have no idea what the veer, and I don't know what that is. And so he kept on talking. Yeah, I think he just kind of ignored me. And then he talked about, and we run the 27 defense. Coach, I raised my hand again. I said, I'm serious. I don't know what the 27 defense is. He goes, are you serious? I said, yeah, Coach, I'm serious. What are you doing here? I said, I want to be a basketball coach. Oh, he goes, okay. He talked to me for about 45 minutes, gave me the best advice. We remained friends until he passed away. And he gave me the best advice ever. He says, Coach, he goes, I think a good coach can coach anything. He goes, so keep that in mind. Next thing to remember, always be the first one to get to school and always be the last one to leave if possible. I said, okay. Third thing he told me, he goes, when you start coming around the field house, and then I raised my hand again, what's the field house? In basketball, we just have a locker room.
Yeah.
So what's the field house? He goes, where you're in right now, Coach. He says, when we start coming into the field house, into the coach's office, in general, you're going to run into two groups of coaches. The old guys that nobody wants to hang around with because they talk too much, and the young guys that are trying to look pretty in their coaching uniforms wearing their hats like this. He goes, stay away from those young ones. The ones that talk too much, go over there and listen to what they have to say. You'll be amazed how much you learn. So he gave me a lot of advice like that. And at the end, after 45 minutes, says, well, Coach, he goes, I'm going to give you a job. Obviously, not because of what you know. He goes, but you were honest. He goes, and you listened to what I was telling you. I could tell you were paying attention. I goes, and if you just do what I told you to do, you'll end up, being a good coach no matter what. And so he hired me. And that was my first head coaching job. And so then he got fired after the next season. And so I ended up leaving, as the incident that I told you about the board member. Ended up going to Copper's Cove and came back to La Jolla. Came back to the South Texas, to La Jolla.
Yeah. Very interesting. I'm a fan. And see, that's part of this show is learn from experiences. Knowledge. Knowledge is power, and advice. You have stories. Everybody has stories. The guests I've had here, especially the coaches, it's, I did it like this. This was how I was successful. And that's what it's all about. I'm a fan of sharing stories with the like you say, the older gentlemen and what everything's about. I'll tell you what though, I talk in the sense of it bothers me when high school football coaches can hurt a basketball program, but I love coaching football. I love coaching. Oh man, I miss it right now. Me and a friend of mine was like, man, don't you? We were excited for the 8th grade team. We had a good seventh grade team coming up. We already knew where we were going to kind of put the quarterback, who the receivers were going to be, the A-backs. Because, we're La Jolla running that, triple option stuff. And, I was excited. We're excited, and I miss it. But I love coaching it. But I think my passion is high school basketball, family stuff. I have 3 kids. I got to focus on them. So, me and my wife talk of when it's going to be right for me to go to high school. But like you say, it's you learn a lot from listening to many people. In your world, how what kind of I mean, you're not gonna talk bad about them, but what kind of challenges did you have? Were they all very similar here in the valley, from La Jolla, Hidalgo Valley View Row, or developing programs, or how was that? Like, what were some of the?
There were some schools where it was easier, So I ended up at Valley View, where there was no football back then. So basketball was it, and they actually, when I got there, they asked me to be the head girls and boys track coach and the JV varsity assistant basketball coach. When they showed me how much money I was going to get paid, I told the head coach, who was also the AD, told Frank, I said, Frank, man, I said, I'm not going to be able to sign anything right now. I mean, I want to take you up on your offer, but I'm losing too much money.
Right.
He goes, what if I offer you cross country? I said, y'all have cross country here? He goes, this will be our first year. So I was the very first cross-country coach ever at Valley View. So I got that one prepared for Basilio.
Ah,
No, one thing I did notice that's funny, right? One thing that I noticed when I was there. Remember, I told you the head coach told me a good coach will coach anything that they can, and no matter
right,
what. I knew
right,
nothing about cross country, zero.
right.
But I went around and asked, and I learned. And this is what I learned. I didn't have enough time with the kids because I couldn't start practicing with them until school started because there was no team before that. That was
Mm,
the first time they were going to have cross country. I had
okay.
70 some boys show up for the first day of practice. They didn't have football, so they went out there and they ran cross country. But when I left, I said, man, they have a good group. The only senior that didn't run was if that guy had not hurt his ankle, he had a stress fracture. If he had not hurt his ankle, he was my number 2 runner.
Mm,
He gets hurt. We would have come in second in district, and we would have
wow.
gone to regionals as a team. The
Nice.
team that won the district was Santa Rosa, who actually had the returning state champion
Oh,
individual, and
right.
then that team ended up winning state together that year that I was there at Valley View.
Oh, nice, nice.
And that guy won 2 years in a row, back to back state championships as an individual.
Oh man, he was a monster. It's interesting you mentioned that because you went around and asked questions.
Yeah, I was not gonna do. My boss, who was the AD head basketball coach, was, "Don't worry about it, Tino. I hired you to do football. I mean basketball." I
Yeah.
said, "No." I said, "I can't do that." I said, "That's not the way I am. I'm gonna learn." I call coaches all over the valley, and some of them I run into them now, and they're like, "You used to be at Valley View, right?" And then he went to Hidalgo, and they remember that I called them. I said, "Yeah, I'm the one that called you, asking you what you did to prepare your kid for cross country because I knew nothing about it."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I went around asking.
It's interesting
I'm gonna
because you
call like 10 people.
yeah, you were in an era where there was no YouTube. No,
No,
there
no,
was no YouTube. No,
no,
nowadays,
no.
Instagram, social media, you can learn so much.
In high school, there was barely starting cross country when I was in high school. Barely starting.
Ándale, barely
I had friends
starting.
running, but I didn't run.
Right,
I didn't
right.
know that I was a runner until later.
Ándale. Wait, you okay, okay,
I
I
can still
see.
run.
So I guess that's where your boys get it, huh?
Well, I mean, I tell you what. I mean, the boys. Our emphasis was always that they do well in school. Okay,
Mm.
and so one of the things that you asked me to do is what asked me to do was what can I share with parents.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Let's talk about that.
So I end up with a kid that was good enough to be Division 1 distance runner. He got a scholarship to go, and he got 6 at state his senior year. In cross country and track, there's a other events that go on because it doesn't have cross country doesn't have a beginning or ending date, so they keep it. So after UIL, Foot Locker puts in an event, and it's Nike, and then Foot Locker puts up events that Basilio's always taking those kids in. You know what I'm talking about because he's always coming out on
Yeah, yeah, he goes and
social
travels and
media that
stuff.
he's taking kids. Okay, so Michael ran in those two, and those are after UIL.
Mm.
There's a organization called Mile Split, US Mile Split, and of course in Texas is TX Mile Split. They rank the kids up until the end of the Foot Locker races. So it's Nike, Foot Locker Regionals, and then it's Nike Nationals and Foot Locker Nationals. So Michael missed going to Nike Nationals by 2 spots his senior year, and then went to Foot Locker, and the top 10 runners make it individually as to nationals. He came in 25th, but that time out of 13 states, keep that in mind. Out of 13 states, he came in 25th. I think that's what it was.
Nice.
13 states. He came in third team all region. In the Nike deal, it was at 6 states. He was second team all region. But the time that he ran in the Foot Locker event, that put him as the 3rd fastest time in the state of Texas his senior year.
Oh
So with the
wow.
rankings, he was number 3 in the Texas Mile Split. So that's when they started paying more attention to him. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I kept telling him, I said, look, I, as a coach, have seen it many times where kids were good enough to play college ball, but their grades didn't match up. So one of Michael being good enough to run Division 1 cross country and track is only half of the job that he needed to do in high school to get there. Because as soon as those coaches talk to him or to me, when can we get his transcript? They want to know if he can even be eligible to enroll in that school. Are they going to accept him? So I was lucky enough that Michael was top 10 in his class. Cody, his oldest brother, was top 10 in his class. Robert graduated number 14 in his class. Top 10% on the other two. Cody,
Right.
Robert was actually number 14, and Caleb graduated 2 years ago, number 3 in his class.
So it's
So
Cody, Michael, and Caleb.
it's Cody, Michael, Caleb, and Robert.
Robert.
Robert's the one that coaches at Juarez, the swimming coach. And
Oh,
track.
okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't know him. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Robert Guerrero. He's a swimming coach at Juarez.
Ándale.
So Robert graduated number 14 in his class. Michael top 10%. Cody top 10%. Caleb was number 3 in his class. Period.
Nice. Very
So,
nice.
and that's Caleb got me this. That's where he's at right now.
Oh yeah, nice. Caleb's at Longhorns.
He's a Longhorn, and this is where Michael was running when he was in a UTA.
I see.
Conference.
Yeah.
So,
So it's interesting you mentioned the grades because was it 2 nights ago? Yeah, Monday night I had my buddy Michael E. Rush. I met him while I was at LMU. He was assistant soccer coach at Loyola Marymount. I didn't know he had played so much professional soccer, but now he's a coach at some Cal State something, I forgot. But for example, all the guests I've had, the coaches I've had, they're all talking about grades. You gotta have good grades. But yeah, Michael, my buddy E. Rush, he mentioned something that had not been mentioned is there's certain rules that if you don't have a certain GPA, we can't even pursue you anymore.
correct.
Because we know you can't get accepted.
It depends on the school.
Right. It depends on the school, but it's more of, I think a lot of high school students don't understand that it's not, oh, he wants good grades. It's no, there's rules that because you don't have a certain GPA, you don't get a certain ACT score, like that's it. That your chances are gone no matter how good you are.
Correct.
And see, I didn't know that. I just thought, oh, you want good grades because of character and pass your classes. There's actually a rule that won't allow you.
Correct. It depends on the school because some schools are more strict than others.
Right.
Schools here in Texas are pretty much the same. So, our focus was that the kids, were good students. Ever since they were born, when they're babies, my kids have pictures of me reading to them after I had come out of football practice at 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I'm reading a book to them and they're babies, they're infants, little kids. And I always read to them. So, because I always said this to myself, I'm a public school teacher and I see that some of them really suck at it. So I'm not going to leave it up to the public school teachers to educate my kids. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So they all were successful in school.
Right.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of offers, but here's one of the things that I got to say about, the accomplishments that Michael had on the cross country course was only half of his work. The other half was in the classroom, which is probably more important than the running.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't have the grades, he's not going anywhere. And I believe that in the Valley, there are specifically 3 sports that in our culture of Hispanics,
right,
that we are excelling. Number 1 is cross country and distance running, obviously. Okay. Number 2, soccer. We get state champions all the time.
Oh yeah.
Here in the Valley, we have some of the best players in the state. Baseball's another one. We go deep in the playoffs in baseball.
Yeah, baseball.
But very few of these kids end up going to college because of their grades. Now the parents, when they're little, oh, I got to go to Houston. I'm taking them to an elite tournament. I'm taking them to a camp here. You got a tryout. Those grades. Make sure you pay as much attention to the grades because if they don't get good grades, ain't going nowhere. They're going to be very good baseball players, and the highlight of their life was in high school.
No doubt about that. Let me give you one. I don't know if you've seen me rant. I went on YouTube and this show once all by myself. I said it yesterday to E-Rush or 2 days ago to E-Rush. There's a personal belief because of what I've seen. I'm not just making this up. This is what I've seen. We still, for example, let's say most of the male, really good soccer players, Bronzeville, and different areas, Valley View, different areas.
Correct.
First generation, they're really good at soccer. They speak Spanish at home. Their parents speak Spanish at home.
Mm-hmm.
They get into a bilingual dual program in whatever district it may be. And then in 6th grade, they come in reading at a second grade reading level English,
Correct.
and they see the STAR test for the first time all in English.
Correct.
To me, whatever districts are doing that, or parents that don't know, especially those soccer players, it's an injustice to them.
I agree.
It's an injustice to them because my advice to any parent, dad or mom, that has those soccer players, I would tell them, get them after second grade. I understand the pre-K, kinder first, get them in there, introduce them. Second grade, hey, you're going all English. That's enough. Because if you talk Spanish at home, you watch TV in Spanish, you talk to your friends in Spanish, you talk to your whole family in Spanish, everything you do is in Spanish, except for the little 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 3 hours every day,
Correct.
other day, and bilingual, we're not helping them set up the grades and the GPA for the university level. Because I've seen guys that are playing D2, JUCO because of their grades,
Correct.
not their talent.
Correct.
But I always go back to, well, how can they get really good grades when they're struggling with the English language, and they kind of really, really get the real start in sixth grade instead of second grade? What do you think about that comment?
Mira, I grew up speaking Spanish. I went to school.
Oh, me too.
4 years old. I didn't know a word in English.
Okay.
Nada. And I struggled in high school. I almost flunked I was an English teacher. I did that just to prove that I could do it. I was an English teacher. I was certified to teach English, history, and PE. Those were the levels that I was certified in. Elementary ed was the degree that I got in, and then I got certified in the other areas too, to do secondary. One of my college professors brings me in and says, Tino, this is terrible. Shows me my paper. This is terrible. How did you get this far? I was already a junior in college. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you don't know how to write? I don't. He goes, no. But because my primary language was Spanish. And then I struggled with the English. I went home, it was nothing but Spanish. And so I made a decision that I was not going to speak Spanish to any of my kids. My kids are not bilingual. I taught them English only.
Really?
They don't know Spanish. Whatever they know is from their friends.
Wow.
My ex-wife and I would have that discussion. I said, look, I struggled because I had limited English capacity.
Right.
I'm not going to do that to my kids.
Yeah.
And so from my experience, I decided not to do it. Then I get my degree in elementary education. I teach third grade, my first year teaching in Laredo. My principal loved me to death. He says, Tino, you got to go and get certified in bilingual education. I took one course. I said, I don't believe in this. I don't believe in bilingual education. I mean, if they would have taught me in Spanish all those years, I would have struggled even more in college.
Yeah.
Like you're saying. So I said, I'm glad I got the English when I came in kinder and first, or else it would have been worse. And so I said, look, I'm not going to get bilingually certified. And the teacher goes, the principal goes, well, I can't guarantee you a job. That's fine. And there's a lot of schools all over the state. I don't care where I go.
Right.
Said, you can't hire me without bilingual education certification. I'm not going to do it.
Right. I think I'm glad you share that story, because I want to stay on this real quick, because if people watch this show, they need to open up their eyes. Let me share two stories. One is my wife's aunt. She's an assistant principal in Corpus Christi.
Okay.
And that's where the idea came into my mind originally. I asked her, hey, what's going on with this bilingual stuff? Because of what I was seeing, the sixth graders coming in, struggling, right? And to me, when I made the decision to come back to the Valley, specifically La Jolla, I said, yo soy puro coyote. I'm a proud coyote. I've learned all these things at these universities through my journey. I want to come and, just share the passion, the hard work, le voy a dar al 100, right? And I spoke to her, in Corpus. I said, hey, what's going on with this bilingual? Do you get situations the way I'm getting? She goes, Rudy, by second grade, we exit everybody out. She goes, yes, we understand. The first generations, we understand. They got to get an introduction, a little, crossover, switch it. But by second grade, that's it. Our goal, she goes, our goal is to get everybody out by the end of second grade. Now, you do have the exceptions that your first year in the United States is in second grade. Okay, we understand. You're going to go third, fourth, and that's it. But if you start in pre-K or kinder, by second grade, that's enough. You need to be in English. We got to set them up. That's the first one. That's where I started, the wheels turning. The second one is in my household. My goal is my kids need to know Spanish. We're a little bit different, you and I, in that sense. But that's fine, different parents.
Mm-hmm.
But all three of my kids, except for this year because of COVID, because they're all, I have two of them that are still, can go to daycare. Is even the oldest is 6, 7 years old. She's in second grade. Their first, what is it? 2, 3. Their first 2 years in daycare, all Spanish. I said you're gonna go. I want them in all Spanish, but they speak Spanish at school. When they come home, all English. English to mom and dad. English on the TV. English to grandparents. So if you talk to them. And if you see them, they speak English to themselves or amongst them. But if somebody comes and talks Spanish to them, they understand. Now, my little one, the smallest, she's probably not going to speak a lot of Spanish because her brother and sister, they communicate in English. The oldest one, because she spoke like you and I. She spoke Spanish till she was like in, pre-K kindergarten, right? But when I saw that is if your home life is mostly English, your TV is mostly English. You talk in English. Your thinking is in English. And yet, I have you all day in Spanish. Now flip it.
Mm-hmm.
Now flip it. Now, if only at school you're doing English and everything else part of your life is in Spanish, what kind of success rate will you have playing the game that is played in what language?
You're
English.
Right. No, you're
so,
right.
I saw it and I flipped it. I was like, wait a minute. Imagine the kids that have that reverse at home.
Mm-hmm.
That GPA, those soccer players you're talking about, those cross-country runners you're talking about, it's a little bit tougher for them.
With that bilingual for a minute here.
Go ahead.
I do a paper when I was in college.
Yeah.
I was an English minor, so I had to do a lot of English stuff. Right. And one of the things that they were asking, I took a position, it was a position paper. And the position was that the only reason that bilingual students tend to learn or become more fluent in 2 languages versus a second language learner, which is like ESL.
Right.
Because the younger kids go through a process of where they do it in kinder, first, second, third, to 6th grade. You're looking at about 6-7 year period where they're mastering the English language, speaking, reading, and writing. Okay. Then you stick these ESL kids, for example, a second language learner, in 7th grade, and you expect them to know English in 2 years. It's not going to happen. So
that's different.
It's different. So I wrote a paper that if you give them the same amount of time and did the same basics going back to kindergarten English, spelling, reading, and stuff.
Yeah, the foundation.
They're going to learn it in 7 years too, just like the other kids.
Yeah.
But you just got to give them time. And so I found one professor or one article that supported me. So that paper gave me a D, the professor. But when I went to Copper's Cove, I taught history. I was a U.S. history teacher in one ESL class. So I get there and I talk to the principal. And I said, where's the ESL meetings? He goes, what do you mean, coach? He goes, well, the ESL department, where do they meet? You're it. He goes, yeah, you're the ESL teacher in the whole school. He goes, you're going to have like a couple of 7th graders, a couple of 8th graders. Okay, so who do I meet with? He goes, go meet with the English teacher. Oh, and by the way, there's a lot of money in the account for you, so anything you need, let me know. Federal funding, bilingual, ESL, the federal funding comes in, and if you're not following what the federal mandates are, you lose the money. So when Corpus is letting go of those kids at 2nd grade, the federal funds stop, but they've planned for that, okay? So if the federal funding is more important than your students, which I thought was the most important thing, you're in school, we create schools for the students, not for the adults, not for the parents, not for the administrators, we do it for the kids. So if your job is to educate kids, then the federal funding should be second and you plan accordingly. And you're right, exit them at some point. So I get there and they said, okay, what do you need, coach? I said, I need And I had 4 kids. I had a Puerto Rican and a kid from Honduras, little boy from Honduras. These two I could talk to because they spoke Spanish. But the Filipino and the Vietnamese, the Vietnamese and the Korean, I couldn't communicate with those guys. They didn't speak Spanish and I didn't speak their language.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, you know what I need? I need some first grade spelling books, first grade reading books, second, third, same thing, all the way to sixth grade.
Right.
And just get me. I don't need a teacher's edition. I can handle the
Yeah.
spelling and the reading. I said, just get me an extra book so that I can see what I'm going to assign them. So I started teaching them that. And every Friday I would take them to the library. The librarian would tape Sesame Street for me. And we'd watch an hour of Sesame Street. That was their time off from all that hectic stuff.
Right.
The teachers are coming to me, hey, Coach, we have one of your ESL students. Yeah. What's the modification? Nothing. Unless you tell me they need it. He goes, you don't know modification? I said, no, sir. No, ma'am. You give them the work like everybody else. And if they struggle, you let me know. And I'll tell you what we need to do with them.
Right.
I go, I'll try to help them first. And if I can't help them during ESL, then I'll tell you what we need to do. You know how many teachers came to ask me, what is the modification we needed? Zero. None. And at the end of the year, the principal comes to me in May. He goes, Coach, I don't have a job for you. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I don't have a job for you. He goes, all your ESL students tested out. The 4, they all tested out.
Which is very important because what was your job? To make sure those kids were ready.
To learn English.
To learn English. Not to keep federal funding, not to increase the budget. It's get the kids ready to be successful in life in the English language.
I was one more story on ESL.
Go ahead.
Bilingual. So I am in a meeting of parents at a school district, okay? And La Jolla. And so they bring in the ESL director and the bilingual director to talk to the parents and how the programs are supposed to work. So I'm sitting there and the ESL director talks first. This is many years ago.
Right.
And my kids were in elementary. And then the bilingual lady gets up there. And so then the bilingual lady goes, this is the way the program goes. He goes, now 1 hour a day, we immerse them into the English language. Because studies show that during that 1 hour of submersion of the language, that submerge them in the English language, make them just do that for an hour. Studies show that that's when they're learning at the highest capacity, at the highest level. That's when they're learning it the most. And I raised my hand. You see, they didn't know I was an elementary certified teacher. I raised my hand and I said, hey, so if studies show that they're learning the most English in that hour, why don't you do it for 8 hours?
Good point. Very good point.
So important to the administrators in the school district.
That's a very good point. I'll tell you another thing is when you talk about studies, and it's interesting because I'm going to tag some people on Facebook that I know that have brothers and sisters that with this bilingual stuff. And I had somebody kind of debate me on a Facebook thread when I went on my 4-minute video by myself. People always go back and say studies show that this works. And my thing is, as I will 100% agree with them, the whole bilingual, dual language, whatever it is, immersion, when they show me that those studies were made or were done in the Valley where you can get away with speaking Spanish all the time.
Correct.
Now, if you tell me those studies are being done in Indiana, New York, where you have to learn English to survive, when you're out in the store, when you're out in the mall, Burger King, whatever, if you have to speak English to survive, not in school, but just in the public world, then that study does not fit to this area. Because in this area, you can go to a corner store and speak Spanish anywhere.
No, I mean, I got criticized. I understand what you're saying. And I got criticized when I decided not to teach my kids Spanish. And I said, hey, I'm going to make sure my kids can function in the world, no matter where they end up.
Right.
They got to be able to function in the world that they're going to live in.
Yeah, the game is played in English, at least in school, for sure in school.
Well, yeah. I mean, and most jobs are going to require you to know some English.
Yeah, maybe mostly English, some Spanish, but not all of them. It just depends. So
I mean,
yeah, man,
look
it's
at the business that I'm in now. 99% of the time, I speak English. 99% of the time, I'm in the business world.
right, right. It's interesting. It's interesting, but I'm glad we touched it. Let me just repeat one more time. I'm gonna ask you this question just so you could verify
Okay.
when people watch this from an hour 26 minutes to an hour and 30.
Mm-hmm.
Let's repeat this one more time. You mentioned there's federal funding as long as there's kids in ESL or ELLs. Is that correct?
Yes. So as long as those kids are being put in ESL classes, second language learners, I think is what they call them, whatever they call them, and which is ESL for in the past. Second language learners or bilingual learners, if you have kids that are identified as that have been placed in those classrooms in that category, federal monies come to the school districts.
So you're telling so
That's a
just
fact.
right. That's a fact. So when they exit out, when
The
they
money
like,
goes.
let's say when they exit out, you're losing money per individual.
Correct. That exits out.
That is very interesting.
So what
And
I don't know is that now the school district is doing this dual language learning. I don't know exactly what that means. That
my daughter's in that.
you want to make sure that they don't know two languages now. I don't know what that means. All I know is there any federal monies tied to that?
I don't know. I cannot
that I
comment
don't
on that. I can't comment on that. I know my daughter is in that right now, but of course she's in second grade. I'm a believer in the holding back.
Mhm.
This is her redshirt year because of COVID. I don't believe she's gonna get the proper education that a regular second grader would get. So I already know that next year she's gonna repeat second grade, but then that year she's gonna start all English from here on out.
Okay.
So that I already made that decision.
You know, Michael, when one of the comments he made when he ended up at UTA, you know, they make him go to tutoring for the first semester at least
Hmm.
when he's a freshman, so you
Right.
get used to the study stuff.
Yeah.
And it was an adjustment for him, you know, to study the way that he needed to study to fulfill the college classes, and still be an athlete. And you know what comment he made to me? He goes, "I just learned this week that, or in this last 2 weeks, this is when he was a freshman, how unprepared my school got me for college."
Interesting.
And that's because I read to him all the time. But
Interesting.
he says, "I goes, they're not preparing us for college."
I wonder how that works.
Well, I mean, that went okay. So you get all these students graduating from La Jolla, okay, and you end up going to college and you end up getting degrees. But there's a lot of people out there that have engineering degrees that can't be engineers because they can't pass the certification to become engineers. They have an engineering degree, but no certificate to be an engineer. How many of those? How many? I mean, think about it. How many CPAs do we have that we accounting majors that never could pass the CPA exams to make a good living?
Right. And very, very interesting because I've even had buddies of mine that can't pass certain tests. I know Elena's one of her like second cousins or whatever. High school classmate. He couldn't pass his bar exam till the third or fourth time. He had trouble with that. Great student though. But you mentioned, Michael had, he said they're not preparing us. He graduated from La Jolla, correct?
Correct.
I want to be clear on this. I don't think it's just a La Jolla issue. I think it's more of the educational setup, the format, whether it's McAllen, Roma, Bronzeville,
Mm-hmm.
San Antonio. It's more of the way we're set up to teach the whatever it is, pass a star, something. Because I remember I got a scholarship for Vamos from Vamos. Thank you, Vamos Scholarship, and the people that gave me that scholarship. I get on the bus, on the Greyhound bus, and I see this guy from Memorial Mustangs. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I recognize him. We played basketball against each other. He was a Vamos recipient, and he flunked out, in fall semester. He was at UT Austin, actually. He got on the bus in Austin. They stopped in San Antonio. I got on the bus. We're coming to the Valley. So it's not a knock necessarily on La Jolla. It's a knock on the education system that we have and how we approach teaching kids, I think. What do you think there?
Well, I don't know what to say. Because you got good teachers, you got bad teachers. I was in education for 12 years. I can tell you that there's good ones and bad ones.
And I think that goes everywhere. You know, it's I think it was we're talking about doctors. I think somebody was talking about doctors. Is like there's always a top half of the class and a bottom half of the class.
Mm-hmm.
And you just better hope that when somebody's operating in you, you got top of the class.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one of those things.
I mean, somebody asked me one time when I got an education. I've been in the business world for a couple of years, and somebody said, "Tino, you were in education, public education. How do we fix public education?" I said, "I already figured that out a long time ago. I just don't know how to do it. I haven't figured out how to get this accomplished. Teaching kids ambition, to be ambitious about something." Okay, I attribute that to myself. So we grew up very humble, upbringing in Laredo, raised by a single mother. My dad died when I was real young. My sister and I stayed home with my grandmother. She took care of us. My mom had to go to work to support us. And so I remember the first time that they built the mall in Laredo, we go over there and I'm looking around. I'm going like, "Hey, how come we don't have cars like that?" And my mom goes, "If you study hard and you work hard, you can buy one too." Okay, but it taught me ambition. I said, "Okay, I got to work hard, study hard to get one of those." And so now I can buy whatever I want to buy. So, how do you teach that?
That's a very interesting comment you make. How to teach ambition, and that's the way we figure it out. And I will say this. I will say this. When kids, for example, social media or Xbox, a kid can get really good at playing Xbox.
Correct.
A kid can get really good at modifying videos, editing, music, background on TikTok or whatever it might be. They have that ambition to make it look nice, to be successful.
Correct.
So they figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're right in the sense that once somebody sees something that they want to be successful at, they will figure it out. For example, me, when I started doing this show, I had no idea on how to audio mixers. So what I do, I had to teach myself real quick.
Correct.
Granted, I have YouTube to go to nowadays, but I was 5-6 hours a day, trying to figure this stuff out. And I still got a lot to learn, but ambition on making it work.
Well, I get to La Jolla in 90 and 91, and I didn't know kids got bused up everywhere here. I was used to walking to school. The school bus, after a game, San Antonio, go back home, at 2-3 in the morning. You drop us off at the gym and we walk home. No bus didn't take us home. We walked home.
Wow.
So I didn't know anything about. So they're telling me bus request for practices. I said, "What? What do you mean bus request for? What do you mean?" "No, but the kids aren't going to show up. They live too far away." "Oh, they better show up." So then they're like, at the beginning, because I didn't know anything about the distance between the school and
oh yeah, I used to live far away from the school.
Well, I didn't care, and I told the kids, "We're practicing at 10. At what time does the bus go by, Coach?" "I'm going to get a bus for you." "How do we get here?" "You can convince your parents to let you go to the movies. You can convince your parents to bring you to practice." And
that's a great point. Because you were going back in those days, they had to go all the way, movie 6, movies 10, all the way to McAllen.
Correct.
So that's a good 20-30 minute drive.
So if you can convince your parents to take you over there, you can convince them to bring you over here.
Right.
If you don't show up, you're not going to play.
No, they showed up. Okay, another thing, Tino, is that I'm interested in just for parents and athletes is, so when did your kids, I guess Michael in particular, he was the most successful runner, I'm assuming?
Correct.
How did they, and then of course I'm assuming Robert was a swimmer?
Robert was a swimmer in high school, yeah.
So at what age or what kind of parenting did you do to make sure that you set them up to be successful in junior high and the high school level? Like, what was that like for you?
Well, I never forced them to do anything. None of them played high school basketball, and I was a basketball coach, and I taught them how to play basketball. Just none of them played. I wasn't going to force them to do. I was going to encourage them to do whatever they wanted to do. Band, swimming, whatever it was, I wasn't going to force them to do it.
Right.
Number one thing is I didn't care what they did. You better bring good grades. So the end result is, top 10% for 2 of them, 14-3 for the other two. I mean, they were pretty good students. And so then now, uh, you can't force your kids to do something they don't want to do. You can't do that. I was a basketball, and I had 4 boys, and none of them played basketball. Think about it.
Not one.
Not one. Well,
You have 80% of a basketball team.
correct. I do 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
So Michael was actually, I was actually preparing him for basketball.
Well, that's where I met you because I saw Michael play in a tournament.
Correct. So Michael was like he was a pretty good point guard. Okay, I taught him how to play. He was not that fast, but he was very, very good fundamental. And so I taught him. And so here he is, and I'm coaching him in 6th grade, 5th grade, all before high school. When he gets to 7th and 8th grade, that's when he was playing for somebody. And as a parent, I never got involved. If the coach came in and asked, "Hey, sir, I know you used to be a coach. Can you help me?" I'll help them, not in front of the kids, but I'll tell them, "Come to my office, or let's go meet somewhere, and I'll help you on what I can remember, because I don't remember everything." But I never, I knew my place as a parent. Okay, so I never got. People say, "Tino, but you used to be a coach. How can you just go and tell them?" I said, "Because I don't show up to practice every day." So when a parent would tell me, "Hey, coach, maybe you should try this," we can talk about that in practice. Tomorrow we start at 4. You're welcome to come 4 to 6 every day. You want to give ideas? Come to practice. I don't care. So mostly it was the parents at the boys club. Rarely, it never happened with high school, public school kids. Right. I wouldn't let that conversation go there. But support your kids in whatever they want to do. Don't force them to do anything. Michael was going to be a point guard. He was very good. And so when he was in 8th grade, football season was over. Basketball, he's waiting for basketball, but there's the gap where the girls are playing first because of gym space. So he says, "Dad, I'm just going to stick around here and kind of just shoot him. The coach is going to let me shoot." I said, "Okay." So then he calls me, he says, 8th grade. He says, "Dad, the coach wants me to run cross country." You know what? I used to tell my boys that didn't play football at Hidalgo Valley View. I said, "Look, if you're not going to, we don't have a football team in the Valley View, Hidalgo, you don't want to play football, you're going to go work out after school with the cross country team." I did that to the Valley View kids. I did that to Hidalgo. So I told Michael, "Hey, that's a good opportunity for you to stay in some kind of shape until basketball starts for you." So then he started running, and then I started asking him. Remember, I had learned about cross country a little bit, because I had to coach it. And so I'm asking him questions, and I'm going like, "Who's your coach?" And he says, "I don't know, Dad." I said, "Is it Coach Garcia?" Because I thought it was, Juan. He goes, No, Dad. It's not a guy. It's a lady. A lady's your coach." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "All right. No, you just keep on doing what you're doing." So then I called my ex-wife. I said, "Hey, who's this lady that's coaching Michael?" "Oh, it's Coach Arevalo, and she's pretty good knowledge." And I said, "Well, yeah, because she knows what the heck she's doing. Well, she ran in college. She better know something." I said, "Okay." So he ended up getting a pretty good junior high coach, very knowledgeable in cross country. So then Michael becomes a district champion. Nice. In cross country. By the time he's a freshman, by the 2nd or 3rd meet, he's the number 1 runner on the team. Now I'm trying to convince him that don't ignore cross country. Still play basketball if you want to, but don't give up on cross country, because I think this may end up where you get a chance to get some scholarships to do athletics in college. Right. And then that's what happened. I mean, when Michael was playing baseball, I had him as a lead-up batter at one time at the boys club. And then as the season went along, other kids were showing me that they could bat better. So I had Michael batting number 9 eventually, from the lead hitter to number 9. My ex-wife tells me, "Hey, how come Michael's batting number 9? He doesn't get as many as bats." I said, "Hey, he's not as good." I said, "I'm not going to put him in there just because he's my son and I'm coaching him. I thought, isn't that fair to the other 8 kids that bat better than him?" Yeah. So, that's the way I always thought about it. And so as a parent sitting in the stands, I never got involved, and so I was able to recognize talent. When Michael was playing in junior high, I said, "That guy right there," and I pointed to this gentleman guy that was playing on the other team. I said, that guy on the B team, that's your best basketball player in the 7th grade. He goes, really, Dad? I go, yeah, he's your best player. And then in 8th grade, they moved him to the A team and playing more. And then with Michael, he was playing with Michael, he'd come off the bench. And then when he was in high school, he was with Eric in the varsity when he was a sophomore.
Mm.
And I said, I told you he was the best player. That's the guy that needed to get more playing time because he was going to end up being the better one. I could recognize that.
Right.
Football, basketball, baseball, cross country, track, those sports in particular, because those are the ones I coached.
Right.
So if I see somebody, I can tell you whether they're good or not.
It's interesting you mentioned. So Michael didn't start running cross country until 8th grade.
8th grade.
Wow. And see, so right there, now we're talking about. There's got to be some genetics involved there.
So I had uncles that ran marathons and stuff, when they were older and stuff. When I was in high school, going into my senior year, that summer, the assistant coach comes up to us and says, off-season program, go run some bleachers, make sure you shoot plenty of baskets, and do some distance running. Bleachers, weights, shooting, and distance running. That's what he said, 4 things. Okay. I would take off running, and so when the year started back then school started after Labor Day, so here we are, September 1981, and the assistant coach comes out and says, okay, how much were you running every day? How much were you? And so when he got to me, he goes, Tino, how much were you running a day? 4-6 miles a day. Mentiroso. No, I was running 4-6 miles a day. I goes, and then I started running on my own just to stay, to not get too big. I went and I ran a 5K one time when I was 19, 18, and I ran it pretty fast, but I never paid attention to it. I thought it was normal.
Yeah. So because, and I guess the reason this is because, he was in 8th grade, he gets a scholarship, and it goes to show that, some coaches or some parents, sometimes genetics does play a part. Granted, you can get way ahead of the game if you start a little bit earlier, but I am a fan of not forcing kids. For example, I want my son to be a soccer player. I want him to be a soccer player. But the day he says he doesn't like it, well, I cannot force him to play.
Correct.
So when we play soccer, I try to make sure it's as fun as possible. We don't play soccer every day. I don't want to burn him out. He might end up playing. He's pretty good at baseball, he just hits. And, I was telling Payo this, Alex Guajardo from La Jolla.
Yeah.
And me and him, and I'll tell him stories. I'm like, dude. And he goes, ya, hombre, ¿qué estás haciendo? Deja el 9, va a ser pelotero, and, we go at it, in a good, friendly way. But you're right. It's, if he doesn't like soccer, I know with my oldest, I know she's into fine arts, that she's not going to be, if she does pursue athletes, I don't see her being gung ho about it. Whether she's gonna be good or not, I don't know. But I can see that.
I mentioned we expose them to as many things as possible.
That's
and
it.
Let them do whatever they want to do.
Right, and whatever they fall in love with.
The only rule I gave them was this: if you start something, you can't quit.
Very good rule.
I never let them something in the
very good rule. Finish, and then from there, you don't have to come back. You mentioned travel. You coached Michael's travel team, and that's where I met you. I swam for Coach Guerrero back in high school.
Okay.
And I still didn't know you at the time. I didn't meet you until those travel teams. How involved were you in travel basketball with Michael's team for La Jolla Coyotes and their young team? What was it? 4th grade, 5th grade, 3rd grade?
It was like in 4th grade that I started putting them together. And what happened was, I saw where Basilio mentioned to you that Michael was supposed to go to Palm Beach, ended up going to La Jolla. In the middle, when I asked Basilio to help me with Michael, because I said, I think he's pretty good. He goes, I've seen him run, Tino. He's good. And I said, can you help me out? I said, because I only know, this much. And heck, you're
the guru. He's a guru.
State championships. Not too many people can say that.
No.
And so I said, can you help me? And he decided to help me. And it's like family to me, Basilio. I love the guy to death, and Hilda and the girls. They took Michael under their wing. They guided him, and I was blessed that he said, because I thought he was going to tell me no, and I remember I was telling my ex-wife, my wife here, I said, babe, I have to ask Basilio because he's the only one I know that knows as much as that. I don't know anything compared to him. And he said, I said, the only thing he can tell me is no. I'm just going to ask him. And so I called him and I asked him, but Michael was already going to be a sophomore when I asked him for help. And Michael had finished his freshman year. Basilio had just finished his last year at Palmview. Okay. So so I was never afraid to ask for help when I don't know something. I'll try to figure it out if I can, but if I cannot figure it out, ask. Bob, there's a couple of coaches that I follow along the way. One of them is John Wooden. Okay.
So yeah.
Wooden, the Wizard of Westwood.
Of course.
The guy. I have a picture of him in my office when he was like 93. He passed away when he was 99. But he said this one time. He says, the minute that you think you know everything is the minute you stop becoming a better coach.
100%.
The minute you think you know everything is the minute you stop becoming a better coach. True.
It's true. You got to always be learning.
Correct. And the other thing he said was this. Don't never mistake an activity with accomplishment. Just because the team's doing something doesn't mean they're accomplishing anything.
Right.
Because I've seen coaches, they're running stuff that makes no sense to me. And I'm going like, well, there's a lot of activity. Parents walk in here and go, wow, the good day. I say, oh. And they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
I can sit on a basketball court. I can sit on a stands, and I can tell you whether the guy that's coaching both of them, whether they know what they're doing or not.
It's tough. So you go with Basilio. Obviously, I mean, I don't even have to go into that story. The mere fact that you just went with Basilio, the rest is history. He's the guru of the valley in cross country. Right. Bottom line, I don't care what anybody says. The guy has the resume to, back it up. Now I'm interested in you had a travel team.
Oh, yes.
In third and fourth grade. How? Okay. Go ahead and talk a little bit about more of that before I ask you this big question.
Yes, up until sixth grade. Okay, so Michael was supposed to go to Palmview. So the kids that are going to end up at Palmview as freshmen with Michael, I start taking them to play in tournaments and leagues together.
So you're trying to prep the kids for Palmview already.
Correct. So I took the kids that were going to end up at Palmview when Coach Hickman was head coach.
Okay.
So, and then Michael ends up going to La Jolla, and I'm going like, what the heck? I've spent all these weekends, all these days, practicing because not only play, I would practice them. Yeah. I would run and practice with them.
So the question, I guess, would be, how successful were those kids at the high school level?
Well, some of them were really good, and some of them were fine, and I run into kids now, and the last ones that graduated, that played with Caleb, graduated last year. So Caleb graduated a year and a half ago.
Oh, so he graduated from Palmview?
Caleb graduated from La Jolla.
Okay.
So, but remember, at the boys' club, some of those kids end up at Palmview, some of them end up at La Jolla. Very few, but some of them end up at Juarez. But, it's funny because, I had a kid one time and he says, we were having a meeting, coach. I saw him at a game. He was playing for Palmview football. And he goes, we're having a meeting, and then they took a break. And so I stayed talking with the coaches. And they started talking to me about how comfortable I looked on the field this year, that, all the experience. And then they asked him, when did you start playing football? First of all, he goes, when I was in third grade. He goes, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, and so you've been playing since third grade? He goes, yeah. He goes, and, so I've been learning football for quite a bit of time. He goes, but the other thing that I had is I had a coach that was pretty good and taught me a lot. He goes, and they asked him, well, who is it? Tino Guerrero. It was some of the coaches at Palmview, because I was their coach in high school, right, when it was public school. So some of these kids are like, yeah, he goes, he kept repeating the same things all the time. I said, yeah, because this is what I'm assuming, and I'm sorry to put it this way. Whenever I coached the football team, whenever I coached the basketball team, or I coached the baseball team, I always assumed that I was coaching the dumbest players in the world. Because if you do that, you will not leave anything unsaid or untaught. Always assume they know nothing. So you hear a lot of times your coaches, they should know better. No, you should have told them. That's your job to teach them. Es como cuando dicen, block that guy that way. Okay, but what if the defender comes this way and you can't block him that way?
Yeah.
Then what? No, get there and block him that way. Well, first of all, you don't tell him how to block him. Second of all, if the guy crosses across you and you can no longer block him that way, teach him to take him the way he came. Things like that. Teach him what to do when the situations come up.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct because there's a story. I'm a guy of stories. One of the coaches with me, he's from McAllen area, but he's coaching there at Chavez with me. He's friends with the guys from McAllen. And he comes on Monday. He goes, dude, you won't believe, we're at practice, all they're stretching. He tells me, you won't believe what they told me my buddy from Cathy said. I go, what? He goes, he says he's having trouble. I go, why? He goes, he's having trouble because his one player, free safety, has never played football before in his life. This is his first year. And I said, did you tell him our whole team is like that?
Right before, yeah.
Yeah. He goes, yeah. He doesn't believe me. He goes, yeah. And then he goes, well, yeah. Well, because of that, he says he's gonna beat us. Last game of the season, we beat them, right? But I've learned over the course of time. You teach, never assume they know.
Correct.
Never assume they know. I teach line of scrimmage. I teach when I say scoot up, what does scoot up mean? When I teach scoot inside, out, scoot out, scoot back, like little terminology that you think they know, because I've learned that not everybody has a 2, 3, 4 year experience to where there's certain verbiage that you already understand, the concept. So it's a very good point that you make there. And I think that's why when it comes to the local politics, especially in the Palmview area, because those are where most of my students live, or the parents, someone the other day mentioned on Facebook, you don't even live in Palmview. Why do you care? Why are you guys so into politics? It's because that's where the students that I teach go. And I need that city and every neighboring city in that district is to have a well-developed Parks and a boys and girls club. So when they do get to us, they're a little bit more experienced than having to start from scratch. I think we do a great job, but it's a big advantage.
Mm-hmm. It is.
That's why I was asking you about how successful were the players from the teams that you coached in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade.
I think that the individual kids, as they got older and decided whether they were going to play football, basketball, baseball, or a combination, because those are the 3 sports that I coached at the boys club. And, once they got there, they tended to be pretty good players. And that's because the things that I would teach them were things that I would teach freshman teams. And these are 3rd, 4th graders, and then 5th and 6th graders. They'll learn it. If you expect them to learn, they'll learn it.
Oh, yeah.
I had a coach ask me one time, Coach, how are they going to learn this? Repetition. By repeating things over and over and over and over and over, and it never gets old, over and over. That's why when the young man from Palmview said, he made us repeat everything all the time. Muscle memory.
Yep.
So when you're driving and a car cuts in front of you, do you start thinking, let me take my foot off the gas pedal. Now let me quickly move it to the left and apply it to the brake.
Do you look down?
It's quick, right? You do it real quick.
Right.
Muscle memory.
Yeah.
So you got to teach them how to do it. So when I tell a kid, okay, we're going to block that guy that way, they already know that they got to take a right step that way, not a left step that way.
Right.
Teach them how to step to the block. Teach them how to, set up for the shot, whatever the case is.
Yeah, whatever sport.
Yeah, for every sport, the fundamentals is important and repetition.
I think my wife, she knew I liked sports. She knew I was moving down to the Valley to be a coach. We had the talks in when the pre-marriage with the deacon, and we get married. We start living together. I mean, we lived together for a little bit before we got married, but things didn't get real for her until about I guess after the course of a year, she goes, I don't think anybody watches sports the way you do. I go, what do you mean? She goes, you watch soccer, you dissect whatever you're dissecting. You watch football, you're dissecting, you're coaching. And I said, and then I told her, I said, my boy Michael Erush, he talked about, well, that was a good pass. Most people say that was a good pass. I was talking to her about Erush. On the other hand, he goes, that was a good pass, but now I gotta check. Did he use the outside of his foot? Did he use the inside of his foot? How fast was the ball going? How filtered? Was there a defender behind him on the left? Did he square it? Like all these things that you do in a split second as a coach, you're like, oh, all that just happened. I understand why it was a good pass and everything that you analyze. I love coaching. I love coaching. It's my passion. I mean, right now I'm teaching. I do a 20-minute, 18-minute workout session with PE, and I'm basically 7 times a day. I'm tired. My body's tired, but that's what the kids need, and that's what we're gonna do. Tino, any closing remarks? I know we've been here 2 hours. I mean, me and you can go at this for another hour, 2 hours.
I got plenty of stories.
Yeah, plenty of stories, but just for the viewers and to go to sleep. Closing remarks on 3 things, and we didn't even touch on the grind. On the coaching grind, on the players grind, on the parenting grind. We can leave that for another episode.
Okay.
But in closing remarks, talk about what advice you give young coaches, old coaches, parents, and players, athletes.
Yeah, don't ever think you know everything. Unless you're the head coach, you got to do whatever your assistant coaches tell you to do. I was coaching with a coach one time, and he was a defensive secondary coach, and he and the head coach were having a heated discussion about secondary coverage. We walked out of there, and the head coach was never convinced by the secondary coach to do a certain coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to go do it the way the head coach wanted it done. And I'm just there helping, and so I'm watching the secondary coach teach it.
Uh-huh.
He's teaching it like if it was his idea. So even if you don't disagree, if you don't agree, you better teach it the way your head coach wants you to teach it, because one day you're going to be a head coach.
Yeah.
And how will you like it if they don't listen to you?
Oh man, that's a bit. And I'm glad you said it, because I'm a firm believer in I have to teach them whatever offense or defense they want at the high school.
Correct.
So they can get prepared in the verbiage and the concept. Great point.
So if you expect loyalty from your assistant coaches down the road, you better be loyal to your superiors right now, to your head coaches right now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Athletes,
work hard and do work, study, work hard in the classroom, or the fundamentals of sports, you're going to get it from your coach. The fundamentals of learning, read every day. Read something every day. The newspaper, the funny paper, a magazine. I don't care what you read. Read something every day that is the fundamental of learning.
I'm smiling, I'm smirking because you're dating yourself in the sense of read a paper. They still exist, but kids nowadays are going to read a Yahoo article,
whatever it is, iPads or whatever it is.
Whatever it is, but they got to read something, whether it's on the computer or anything. Parents, what do you got to tell to parents?
The parents need to be there to support their kids on whatever they decide to do, okay? Even if you spend years taking them somewhere, but then they decide to do something else, that's fine. Just support your kids. But make whatever the extracurricular activity is, whether it's academic or it's athletic, that is the second part of what's important. There's 2 parts to this: academics and athletics. Okay, so if you're a student athlete, you're a student first. So as a parent, you better treat that like that. So if your kid is struggling, but the coach needs them at this all-star select superstar tournament in Round Rock or wherever, send them to the tutor instead.
Right. That's a challenge. That is a challenge. But I think the more we talk about it, the more parents understand the grades, especially now that, I'm going to start reiterating the whole, it's not the character part, it's just the rules that if you don't have a certain GPA, they can't even recruit you anymore. Like that's it, you're done. Great points. Tino, man, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Sharing your knowledge, stories. I'm sure you have a bunch more. We'll get you back on the show in about a month or two, see what's going on with COVID and the season and all that, man. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good night, Tino.
Love you guys.
Later. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Tino Guerrero. I met him through tournaments. You know, he had his kids in there. Great knowledge. I'm sure he has a lot more stories. I'm a fan of learning through stories. I'm a fan of sharing information. That way we all learn across the valley, across the state. For those that are watching across the state, I don't know. It's just good to hear, man. It's just good to hear different philosophies, information, facts. Hopefully some of you that are out there watching appreciate the show. You learned a little bit from him and our conversation. And of course, everybody's welcome to leave comments, ask questions on the comment box. I asked the guests. Thank you so much for watching. One last time, make sure that we vote for Adolfo Mendez, our son, District 2. Great guy. He is my brother. Vote for Adolfo Mendez. And World Finance. When life throws unexpected expenses your way, World Finance is here to help. Whether it's medical bills, car repairs, or child care expenses, a personal installment or title loan can help you take control and get back to the good things in life. Get started by applying today at their Mission location at 1600 North Conway, Suite 8, Mission, Texas. They can take applications by phone at 956-580-4533, or you can visit their website at loansbyworld.com. Everybody, if you need a loan, go with them. Highly encourage it. Vote for my brother. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. You guys take it easy. Have a good night.